Welcome to Evil Live, the live media commentary of the show that answers a question: how filling is a feast of blades? Subscribe if you're new to the channel, because today we are reviewing the E23 adventure of Steve Jackson Games' In Nomine Feast of Blades. That's right. Okay, so in all fairness, I want to sort of lay this out before I get into this. I haven't played this role-playing game since 1997. It's 1998. I think when I came back from basic training for a couple days before I went to my advanced individual training in 1998, I played it a couple times then in that short time period with my friends. But since then, I haven't had an opportunity to play it. I am planning a playthrough, an actual play of this adventure, this module. It will probably take 3 sessions. It might take 2, depending on how the players react and stuff. But I plan on having like session zeros where we create characters individually with the player, and then, get them all together, and sometime this winter do the run through this module. All right, so this was published by Steve Jackson Games. It's a tabletop role-playing game based on In Nomine universe. Of course, I've been doing a whole series of introductory videos to the role-playing game because really there's none out there, like, at all. There's a couple reviews out there, but there's nothing that really talks about the game and the universe and everything like that. So I figured if no one else is doing it and I can scrape a little time together during a week to do a video, then I'm going to do that. So at least it exists. And it'll be especially helpful for players who maybe want to start playing or maybe want to start running their own game, to get a good idea of what the game is all about before you start investing in game materials and stuff like that. So anyway, that's what I'm doing, and that's why I'm reviewing this on this channel. Because I figure if I'm going to spend the time to study this stuff in order to prepare for a game and then get players all invested in stuff, then I want to make sure I know what I'm doing, and I want to give an honest feedback to the audience about what I think about it. Now, this was originally included in what was called the Game Master's Pack in 1997, which was ostensibly this module, the first version of this module, and a Game Master's Screen. So for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically just a fold-out, not quite cardboard fold-out piece of paper, but a rigid, thick, heavyweight piece of paper with a bunch of sort of quick reference rules on the inside of it, so that you can sort of put it in front of you as the game master at the game table, and you can see all the relevant stats that you're going to need to reference throughout the course of the game. That's really what it is. I've never really used one in that setting, but I wanted to pick it up because I had it as a kid, and I just wanted to grab another one, and so I did. Anyway, this module was actually re-released after a bunch of modifications. So the way that it came out with that Game Master Pack is that Game Master Pack was like the second product, I think, released for In Nomine. And this is the original with the Game Master's Pack, and the previous image was of the remake of it. And since that release, there was a bunch of other supplemental information released about Infernal Player's Guide, Celestial Angelic Player's Guide, Corporeal Player's Guides, Game Master Guides, all sorts of different information and source books were released after the fact that this would easily reference had it existed. And so when Steve Jackson Games decided to put these up for sale on their website and on DriveThruRPG's website, with as a PDF, they thought, well, why don't we just sort of re-look at this older material, give references to the appropriate books where it's necessary, and flesh out the adventure just a little bit more. And that's really what they did. The original, I read them both this week. They're really quick reads. And the first one was sufficient. This one was sufficient. The reversion, the reimagined one, or the revisited one, was infinitely better. Not because the content was a lot greater or a lot more elaborate. It's just that it made references that were really appropriate for players getting into the game now, that there's no more game materials being made, and so there's a finite source of information to reference. Now you know exactly where to go for what information, and you don't have to sort of make it up on the fly or anything like that. And I'm going to get to the actual content of the module here in just a second, but I want you to know that this is not going to be a spoiler review because I am going to be running players through this, and I don't want to give them any hints about what it's really about. I'm going to give the setup and what I think abstractly about the payoff and the journey. So it was revised near the end of the game's life cycle to include references to other publications in the game, and then also to include information about In Nomine GURPS. So GURPS in and of itself is arguably the most famous role-playing game system that Steve Jackson Games ever released. When I was in the military, I had a buddy who introduced me to GURPS, and he was a fanatic GURPS player. I mean, there's some people who are just like, I play Dungeons and Dragons, rah! And that's all they think about, and that's their lives. That's kind of what this guy was with GURPS. And, I'm not throwing any shade. You like what you like, and that's cool. But it was all new to me. And to know that if you were comfortable, it stands for Generic Universal Role-Playing Game. So if you were familiar and comfortable with GURPS, but you still wanted to try out In Nomine, they had a whole conversion booklet for that so that you could play In Nomine within the entire ecosystem of GURPS products, which was massive. Just sort of spanning all over, from horror to sci-fi tech and aliens and medieval and fantasy and stuff like that. I mean, really all sorts of insane stuff for that role-playing game system and multiple editions and everything. So I thought it was nice that if you're interested in In Nomine, but you're only familiar with GURPS, that you could still play through this and other adventures that Steve Jackson Games released for In Nomine, because it gives you those conversion stats there. It's very much similar to how in 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, when Saga System came out, right at the sort of precipice when TSR was selling over to Wizards of the Coast, they realized that Saga System wasn't selling very well. And so they decided to include Saga System game supplements, or actually Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition game supplements like adventures and modules and stuff, with Saga System conversion information in it. So regardless of what system you liked to play, you could still play that module. I appreciated them doing that at the time, and it's really just what Steve Jackson Games is doing here. It just makes sense for longevity of play, really. All right, so it was authored by S. John Ross. The artist is Dan Smith. I think the art in it is, sufficient. This is the new cover. I don't know why they went away from the other cover, which was an image of a demon prince. I think keeping that demon prince on the cover makes infinitely more sense because it's a badass image. I don't know why you would have a dude, in flames. I don't even know who that's supposed to be. I've read it twice, and I don't know who that's supposed to be. Maybe I'll have to read it again. But anyway, the artwork for In Nomine is really hit or miss, in my opinion. Mostly miss, but there's some really great work by some great artists. So the setup for this adventure is it's 3 to 5 different celestials, angelic or diabolical, so angels or demons. You could actually mix up the party if you want. So let players choose what they want to play, and then you can run them through it. And it actually gives you a bunch of conversion information for if they want to play mortals, like soldiers of heaven or hell or something else, sorcerers or something. Or if it's only like a 1 player that you had to play, how to convert it from 3 to 5 players down to 1 player. So you can just do a one-on-one adventure with this easily just by modifying the approach to it. And one thing I found really interesting, because I've played In Nomine a lot in my youth, I never played a module. In fact, I've never played a module until last year in any game system at all. I've always just done my own thing. I just had more freedom. I didn't have to do a whole bunch of preparation for it, and it was just a lot more free form, flowing, and fun for me. But now that I have run modules and I'm familiar with the complexity involved in it and the amount of preparation that needs to go into it, reading this was a real delight because it allows you enough freedom that the players can kind of do whatever they want. You present a setting and a situation, and they sort of just approach it however they want. They give you enough tertiary information in order to, on the fly, sort of shift and move the story around depending on what the players decide, but not so much that you feel bogged down as a game master. I really appreciated that. So it really does a great job of setting it up and letting you sort of run it however you want to run it and let the players do whatever they want in it, which freedom of player engagement is kind of the whole point of role-playing games. And not all adventures allow you to do that, which is why I did appreciate it. So the MacGuffin in this, without spoiling anything, is called the Blade of Bithynia. Now this, in the lore of the module, was fashioned about 700 years after the death of Christ in Russia. And it was originally meant to be an artifact, a relic that was going to be used to topple the Russian regime. It ended up, because it was created by celestials, demons, it ended up sort of being taken and stolen and used by different sides of the war since that time until, a couple hundred years later, when it just sort of fell off the map of the earth. No one knows what happened to it, and it's a big mystery, hands in the air. So the initial setup of this adventure is that the players are approached by their superiors, whether it's a archangel or a demon prince, depending on their choice of characters. And they're told, I need you to, for whatever reason, and each demon prince and each archangel has their own justifications for wanting this and what to do with it once you get it. But the whole setup is that the players are approached by them saying, look, you need to go get this. It's supposed to be coming in on a plane flight from Portugal, and the individual, you should be able to sense relics as celestials, and so you should be able to find this once it lands. So the whole setup is everyone goes to the airport and waits for this airplane to land. Now, of course, that would be too easy if it was just you wait for the dude at the baggage terminal, you grab it, and then the game's over, right? This goes infinitely more detailed than that. And the individual who has the knife has his own sort of tangled web of deception that not only is he enacting, but he's the victim of as well. And so everything that you learn throughout the course of this adventure as a player shifts and moves and adjusts the entire time until you get to the very final third act of this, and you finally get all of the information and you realize the true story of the dagger or the blade of Bithynia, and who's been holding it this whole time, and what happens, once it's sort of revealed. I can't really go into more detail than that, but I will tell you this. I was pleasantly surprised in the direction it took, because the setup of a sort of capture/investigation game doesn't really, like a cat and mouse style investigation game, doesn't really do it for me. But this goes so much more in depth than that. And what I loved about In Nomine when I was playing it as a kid is that we rolled in stuff like from Hellraiser and stuff from Lord of Illusions, a bunch of Clive Barker's Twisted Mind novel works. And we created this sort of dark, vile underground of a world. This module does that for you. Now, you can take it as light or as heavy as you want, and you can, of course, add in your own flavors and flair to make it even more, twisted and grotesque or dark and terrifying or sexual or whatever vibe you want to go for. It is very adult on its face, and I'm going to be taking it infinitely more adult because that's just my vibe and the vibe of this channel through the actual play stuff. So I really liked that I always thought it was my own sensibility, but no, it is actually the game system itself as well. So I really appreciated that. So they're going to be waiting, and then all hell is going to break loose, and they're going to have to think on their feet as they're trying to unravel the story and collect this blade for their own superior. And then once they get the blade, what then happens next, or if they even get the blade? I mean, there's a whole bunch of scenarios where if they never actually get it, what happens? If they never find the individual, what happens? And different ways that the DM can kind of, nudge them gently in different directions to get to that third act. And because it's formed as a 3-act structure, it feels infinitely more cinematic. You're introduced in the airport where it's just banal and normal, but it unravels into pure crazy insanity. And that's what I love about these types of games, is that it can go from 1 to 100 like that, depending on what the players do and the setup of the game system itself or the adventure itself. Hey, Horrific Posse, how you doing? So it's going to be spoilers for future game? No, I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm just setting up the very, very basics of it and give you my abstract ideas of it. So if you want to watch, you're more than welcome to watch. All right, so that being said, the MacGuffin is the blade, and that's the initial setup for the players, so that's not giving anything away. And of course, there's going to be multiple different groups vying for power. The great thing about In Nomine as a game system is the political setup they have. Not every angel, archangel is okay with each other. Some of them are actually warring with each other in the same way that not all demon princes agree and cooperate. They work against each other. And then you have the war, which is literally angels versus demons on Earth. And so it's a constant mishmash of you trying to figure out what's going on. And if your companions have their archangels telling them one thing and your archangel is telling you another, you have to then navigate that political situation of the inter-party issues in order to come to some sort of compromise so that you can succeed in whatever the mission is you were sent on in the first place. All the while trying not to upset the symphony, trying not to harm any humans unless you're a demon and then you don't really care that much. It's really going to be kind of cool. Oh, nice. Yeah, if you check it out later, let me know what you think. Appreciate it, man. So there's multiple groups at all times throughout the entire course of this adventure that you're trying to navigate. Multiple different factions, if you will, of groups as well. So the strength of this adventure is not that it's a one-shot, but it has the makings for a much more long-term game. And this is something that just as any GM worth their salt is going to do, right? You run through a game, and then in future games, you make callback references either from situations or characters from the previous games to fold this long-term story into what's referred to as a campaign, to make it feel like it is a universe that you're living in and operating in. So it's not just a one-off experience. This particular adventure has a wonderful setup for long-term referencing and character development and callbacks and everything. So I really, really appreciate that about it as well. And that's kind of the basic setup of the adventure and everything like that. So some of the things that I love that are included in this, magic, culty, like human occulty type stuff. I love that stuff, and I love that it's involved in this. You've got... I actually don't know if I can say anything. You have set pieces that, of course, I didn't touch my screen, and so it turns off. You have set pieces that are as complicated as airports, hospitals, hotels, and like secret hideout mansions that are older than the signing of the Constitution. I mean, all sorts of really cool settings for you to sort of go through and explore. You have adversaries that are, how do I say it without like spoiling anything, fervently after the same thing that you are and will continuously rub you the wrong way. And then there's third-party actors who are just out for their own interest. They have nothing to do with against you or against anyone else, but they're just trying to do something to benefit themselves in some strange way. And so I just love that there's so many different types of people involved that is going to ensure that at any given moment, the players are going to be challenged. It's not going to be like an impossible thing because they may wipe the floor with everyone they come across if that's the approach they take. But you don't have to take that approach. And it's as challenging as they end up allowing it to be. Meaning you can sit with your thumb up your butt and run through a whole game. And that may be fun for you, but the players next to you aren't going to have fun. They want role-playing. They want engagement. They want storytelling. And so if you as a player are not contributing in that way, well then, yeah, you may just force your way through the adventure and say that you did it, but you probably aren't going to have much fun, and no one else is going to have fun the whole time. So if instead you're really engaged in the story and you're really playing as if you're your character and you're just getting into the world and getting your fingers wet, just sort of getting into it, that's much more interesting. And it makes all of the other obstacles that are going to be in your way infinitely more engaging. And that's as clear as I could possibly be about it without spoiling anything. All right, so that being said, I didn't really want to go into a whole detail about the adventure, of course, but after reading it, out of 5 evil eyes, I'm going to give it 4. It does a great job as a module to set up a story and to give you that 3-act structure, which is really important. It does a really great job giving you enough information so that you can manipulate the adventure on your own to suit whatever type of group you're with, making it harder or easier depending on how their characters are built and how experienced their characters are, and the players themselves, of course. And I guess I wanted a little bit more of, how do I say this? I wanted more detail, I guess. I like, and the thing is, when you have detail, it doesn't have to be mandatory. You can have detail that's sort of tangential that you could pull on if you want. The rewriting of this module does an infinitely better job because it really involves the archangels and the demon princes' perspectives on things, which was absent almost entirely from the first version of the module. And so I thought the rewrite was a lot better. But it just could have gone a little bit more for me. And again, it's a little bit lacking because they introduce a type of character that at the time the module was released, they didn't have any stats for, they didn't have any system for, and so it was a little bit hollow. Later on, they did add in that character role or that type of playable character with mechanics so that if you revised it with those mechanics involved in it, it would be an infinitely more interesting playthrough. And so they didn't add that aspect of it. Again, it's abstract. I know it doesn't make sense, but once you see the playthrough, you'll understand. And so that's why I think it could have been better if they included a little bit more mechanics into it. Though they did a decent job. So 4 out of 5 isn't bad. Take the evil eye and smile and be happy. Hey, Chris, how you doing, man? All right, is there a section about how to deal with dumb players who keep channeling Keanu Reeves' accent from Constantine? Keanu Reeves doesn't have an accent except for Keanu Reeves. That's it. He's Stoke. That's Keanu Reeves' accent, bruh. That's all he has. I've never seen Constantine, so if that's how he sounds in that, then no. It does not tell you how to deal with that. But I have a method of dealing with players like that. It's called muting them. It's very effective. If you're in person around a table, then it's called duct tape. Put it across their face and just say no. That's it. All right. Thank you all so much for tuning into this review. I really do appreciate it. If you ever get an opportunity to try out In Nomine as a role-playing game, I would recommend it. It's a fun adult storytelling system that allows you to dive into some really creative stories and possibilities for character creation and development. So that's going to do it. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, remember, the evil spelled backwards is live. So get out there and be evil.